Hello everyone, thank you so much for having me here. So I'm actually going to start off by admitting that I'm very lucky that over the last few years I have worked for 3 of the fastest growing tech startup companies in the world. I've worked for Tableau Software, Box and Confluent. I am a coordinator at heart, and that means that I spend a lot of my time scheduling interviews for the recruiters that I work with. And in the other part of my time, I work alongside our US teams, or have worked with previous US teams and the one that I work with now, to actually roll out systems and processes across the globe. So a lot of those systems are built out in the US, and I work with the teams to help sure that we can bring them out across EMEA. So first off, along with that, I'm going to admit that I'm a bit of a geek. And what I mean by that is that I like processes. I like systems, I like guidelines, and I like recipes. I'm the sort of person who likes to know how to go through a process to make things happen right. But there have been many times in my career where I've had to wing it. I've had to build out a process as I'm going along and then write it down afterward. It's quite fun. My manager that I have right now would call it building the plane whilst you're flying it. Yeah, I think a few of us know what that feels like. But as much fun as that is, there are times, many times, where knowing what you need to do to go through a process will inevitably lead to better results. When Luke contacted me and we started talking about recruiting automation, the first thing that actually came to my mind were the systems that I've used in the past in the different companies and how they've been rolled out. Some of the systems that I've used were already in place when I joined the companies, and some of them we implemented whilst I was there. So I'd like to tell you a story. In a previous company that I worked for, the decision was made by somebody higher up in the US to use a particular piece of software to track employee referrals. The way it operated was that it was supposed to help our employees submit candidates into the system and make it possible for our recruiters to find top talent in the social media of our employees. It was a pretty sexy piece of software, but it didn't work. Why? Because nobody in the company actually knew that we had it. Very few people had been told that this software had been integrated into our applications. None of the recruiters knew how to look through it to actually find this so-called top talent. And basically what happened is that after 6 months, we realized that it had not in any way positively impacted the amount of employee referrals coming into the business. In fact, it may have been detrimental because the system was confusing, and our own employees had lost faith in our team's ability to deal with their referrals. We had to drop the system as soon as we could and start from a worse place, which sucked. We need the best systems and software and applications in our businesses to ensure that we're able to speed up the hiring process and hire people as quickly as possible. When I talk about systems, I'm talking about software such as things that we use in recruiting, things like Leather, or another one that I've totally forgotten. Greenhouse, that one right there. I was literally like, oh, my mind's gone blank, great. It could be Workday that we use in HR, DocuSign, anything that we use to help speed up that process and make sure that we can make that hire as quickly as possible. It could be scraping systems that your recruiters use to actually find contacts. So, how do you go about making sure that we get the best pieces of software into our company? I would suggest the first thing that happens is that you have almost a bit of an epiphany. You're using a piece of software and you think, this sucks. This thing's broken, it's faulty, it could be improved. That's great, that's fantastic, that's step 1. We know that we want to make something better. I would say what you want to do is you need to break down what isn't working. Have a think about what you don't like about this piece of software, what you do like, and actually start talking to your colleagues about that. One of the reasons I talk about this and I say this, it's important to articulate what you think is wrong with, let's say, a piece of software and application, is because if you are using it and you think that it's wrong or it's bad or something's broken or something doesn't work, then you'll probably find that your colleagues who are using it are probably having the same issue. And that's great, because that allows you to start building up this idea of what's wrong with this application and what could be right with it. The more data points you have, the more information, it helps you understand what you need to do. You need to start thinking about what would that word better or improved look like to you? What is it that you want out of this new software? Perhaps you need to get more reports. Perhaps the one that you're using actually is pretty bad for pulling reports out of. Perhaps you need it to have more information and be more accurate. Or perhaps you just need it needs to be easier to use. It's important to think early on about what you actually want to get out of this piece of software, so that at the end, when you start going out to vendors and they start showing you all those sexy pieces of software, they're going to show you every bell and whistle and how fantastic it is. But you need to know, is it actually going to solve the problem that you have spotted in the first place? And also, the earlier you can start to think about what that concept of better or improved is, the easier it's going to be at the end for you to really evaluate the success of this product. How will you measure success? That's actually a question that's going to run throughout and something you really need to do at the end, but it's definitely worth thinking about early on. So you know that you want to make a change, but it's very unusual to be able to make that change on your own. We don't work in a vacuum, so it's really important that we start to think about who are our stakeholders. Who are our stakeholders? They are the people who would give a crap if you changed this piece of software. They are the users, internally and externally. This is where I think my presentation might be weird. Okay, let's see if this works. So yeah, they're your users. And they might not always be in your department or your team. I find that most pieces of software that we use in a company are actually used by multiple departments. So for example, the recruiting software that my team use is used by the recruiters, the coordinators, the hiring managers, the internal interviewers, the applicants on the outside, and recruiting operations. All those people are using this piece of software in a different way, and they all should have a say on what kind of new piece of software we put in. So it's probably a good idea to reach out to them and tell them that you're thinking of making a change and ask them what they think about that. What do they think is wrong or right? Yeah, I knew this was going to go a little bit funky. We're going to take a second. I'm going to talk about benefits in a minute. I'm actually going to leave that and come back to this slide first. The second thing I want to talk about actually is decision makers and champions. So who are your decision makers in this process? The way I thought about this is that you can get a group of people together and work out what kind of software you want, go out to market, find the sexiest little beast that you find, and you think, great, we're going to roll this out in our company. And then you go to your finance team, you go to legal, and they say, no, it's not right. It doesn't fit into our company, it doesn't meet our guidelines. They're your decision makers. They're the people who need to know if you're going to make a change. So again, it's worth planning that out and thinking about it, because in the end, you don't want to have gone through that whole process and just get hit with a big fat no. You need to make those people into your champions. You need to find out who those people are, include them early, understand what they need to know, and see if you can win them over so they're going to help you roll out this piece of software across your business. There's actually another kind of champion that I've come across, which I think it's really important to be aware of, which is executive champions. People in your business who are much higher up at the executive level, who may want to be involved or need to be informed about what you're doing. And they can be incredibly beneficial to have on your side. But there can also be some things that you need to do with them early on. In a previous company, I had asked to be part of a group of people who were trying to roll out interview training across our business. It's something I'm fairly passionate about, and I really wanted to help to roll it out across Europe. So I met with a group of people regularly, twice a week. We talk about what kind of interview training we wanted to do, who should attend, how we would roll it out. We had a really good plan of attack. About halfway through this process, my manager mentioned to me that one of our executive team was actually quite interested in interview training. I thought, that's great, fantastic. I'm going to show them what we've got. So once we'd built out our plan of attack, I went to this person, I had some time in their calendar, and I showed them the presentation. Little did I know, this person was not mildly interested in interview training. They were very passionate about it. And their ideas about what that meant were very different from what we had created, what we had thought to do. He tore my presentation to shreds. And I say that in a good way. But I basically had to leave that meeting kind of feeling a little bit like I'd been kicked, but also realizing that I wish I'd included that person earlier on in the process. I didn't realize that he was a decision maker. I didn't make him a champion. The minute that someone says that somebody is interested in a project, it's always worth reaching out to understand the scope and understand what they want and how much sway they're going to have in the long run. But at the same time, having an executive champion or someone much more senior involved in your process can bring benefits. They know more about the company. They know more about what matters to finance and to legal, about the best times for you to roll these things out. They can be your champion in front of the rest of your executive team. They can find the money, so it's worth having them. I wanted to discuss the other benefits about having a larger group of people involved in this decision-making process. The first thing is that concept of diversity of perspective. And what I mean by that is that anytime that you're trying to roll out a process or decide what software to use, we only ever have our own perspective on how things operate. You'll never think of everything yourself, of every scenario of what you should or shouldn't do. I know that I am not as naturally curious as some of my colleagues at work, which means that when I'm involved in a project, I often show them it and they just come up with all the questions that I hadn't even thought about, which can be a challenge at times, but it's actually quite fantastic because they help me see the blind spots, they help me understand the things that I've missed. The more people you can have involved, especially from different departments, the quicker you'll be able to understand what you really need to do, and they can actually help you in the long run to get things done. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. If you have a group of people and you say to them, hey, we will come together because we think we need a new piece of software that's going to do X, Y, Z, you might find that some of those people say, great, I already used one previously, I'm going to go and contact my previous customer contact and get him in here. Or they might say, great, I know someone in another department, I think they use something similar to this, let me ask them. There's no reason for you to go out and do all this research into new pieces or applications or software if somebody internally knows something about it. Collaboration and support. The more people you have on your side, the easier this process will be. It can take a fair amount of time in some companies to make the decisions and to roll out a piece of software across a company. And there can be pain points, there can be problems that need to be solved. There's no reason why you should do it on your own. Have some people on your team and on your side to help go through this process. You can work things through together. And finally, as I said, cross-department knowledge. If you have someone from legal on your team helping you to do this, if you have someone from your finance, from IT, one of your coordinators, whoever, you bring people together, they know more about the business, and we're able to help each other work out how to get this done. So, you've come together, you've made certain decisions about what you want to do, now you go out to the market. You start looking at different products. What you want to do before you do that is really think about what are you looking for and what questions do you need to ask those vendors. You're going to meet customer contacts, they're going to come in and show you their sexy products. What are you going to ask them? How will you know what you're looking for? You want to sit down, you want to think about every single question that you need to know about that product. How does it operate? How many people can use it at any time? How do you pull reports from it? Which systems does it integrate with? Think of every single question, write it down so that you can put it to them and they can help you understand how that product works. In other words, be like Columbo. Just one more question. I just love Columbo, I just wanted to get that picture in here. But what I love about him is that he was always that person who asked just one more question, one more thing. How does this work? Maybe I missed this out. I think there's nothing wrong with asking that person as many questions as possible. And there is another reason for that. Is that I say make friends with your customer contacts. If you're looking at a piece of software or a product, The person who's trying to sell it to you doesn't just want to sell it to you, they want it to work. So they will answer all of your questions. They want to understand your business and how you would use that piece of software, and then they want to work with you to see if it is going to work. So be their best friend, they will be yours. And ask for customer references. When we look at products and they've already been rolled out in other companies, you may find that that's been done incredibly successfully, and these companies can say to you, hey, I can actually show you a customer contact, and they can tell you how we use this piece of software previously. And that will help you understand if this is the right piece of software for you and your business. Let me check where I am. So, we've picked a piece of software. We like it, we think it's good, we want to test it, and we want to roll it out. First thing is testing. Why is this so important? It's very important, because the more you understand about a piece of software before you purchase it, the better. You want to test it out with as many different users as possible. You've already thought earlier on about who's going to use this piece of software in your company. You want to see if you can rope them in. Can you get them to look at it? What do they think of it? Try and test it out as much as possible. Oh, and this one's going to come out on the wrong side again. Come on, there we go. Get feedback from your testers. Again, this is a great opportunity where you can tell those people, what do you think about it? What are your questions? And everything they tell you, you go back to your customer contact, who's now your best friend, and you say, hey, can I pitch this to you? Somebody brought this to my attention. How does this operate? Tell me more about that. So this is a really important part of that process to make sure that you get the right piece of software. The other side is the roll out. You've picked a piece of software. How are you going to get it out across your company? The first thing that comes to mind is actually considering timing. And there's two sides to this, two sides to the timing. The first side, which I thought about, was that you have to make a decision about when to roll out a piece of software in your business. Most people would do this at a quiet time. So let's say in the middle of summer when it's actually less painful for your business. But that might also be a time where a lot of people are on holiday, so no one's around to learn about it, no one's around to be trained. You need to have a really good think about what's going to work for your business. Especially, it's a really good time to talk to people in other departments and talk to if you have an executive champion, because they're really going to know when's a good time. The other side to timing that one of my colleagues pointed out, and I thought was very clever, is she spoke about the concept that in some companies, if they're bigger companies and your salesperson works quarter to quarter, as it gets to the end, towards the end of their quarter, they may have a quota to hit and they want you to buy that product before the end of the quarter. And that may mean they give you a discount if you agree to buy it before the end of the quarter. So it's worth thinking about when you're buying it and seeing if you can wangle that to your good. I love that Luke's giving me the eye like, don't say that, don't say that. No, that's not true at all, no. The other thing next is communication. If we look back at the story I told you earlier about this product that we rolled out in my business, it was a fantastic, sexy piece of software that everybody should have known how to use, but they didn't because it had been so poorly communicated with the company. You could literally say the name of the product and people were going, what? Who? I don't know where that is. Communication can make or break. You can have a great piece of software, but you don't want to hide it under a bush. You want to make sure everybody knows where it is and how to get hold of it. So you need to think about who you're going to communicate, who needs to know, how you tell them. Tailor that communication. I know that the way I talk to and share information with my hiring managers in sales is very different from the way that I communicate with my engineering managers. They care about different things, and I have to tell them different things. So you need to communicate differently. Training. So you rolled it out. People need to know how to use this piece of software. You need to have a good think again about how you're going to train everyone. My personal thing is I would say you want to go with a whole plan of attack and take every way possible. You want to do webinars that you record. You might want to have user manuals that you have available. You may want to go to team meetings, meet people one-to-one, have office hours. People learn differently, so personally I would say you need to give people as many ways as possible to absorb that information about this new piece of software. this is a really important one that I like to put out there. Support, customer support. You need to make sure, actually this is a two-pronged one that I forgot and I'm going to make sure I tell you about. In a previous company that I worked for, we had a piece of software that we were using, and it had actually been rolled up from the US. Now the problem with that is that it was a fantastic piece of software, but the customer support for the company was also in the US, in Palo Alto. That meant that when that piece of software stopped working at 9 AM in the morning for me, I couldn't get access to the customer support till 4 PM in the afternoon, which wasn't super. So it's definitely worth thinking about where the customer support is for your software. So ask that of any person who shows you what they've got. But also make sure that if you know there's customer support, make sure everybody else knows where that customer support is. Because as much training as you put out, as many ways as you show everyone and say, look at this fantastic piece of software, this is how to use it, we all know there are many people who will not watch the training, who will not look at the user guides. They will open that piece of software and try to use it and probably make a mistake. And then they'll think it's rubbish. And basically, the best way for you to make sure they don't think that is to make sure they know how to get access to customer support so that they can resolve the issue as soon as possible. I've seen that happen many times where people are going, oh, this is crap. And you're like, can you just press the customer support button? Just chat to the person in the corner? Oh yeah, they were great. Yes, they were. Use them. I could get very passionate about that. I've seen that many times. So, we've rolled out a piece of software. It's looking good. We're at the end game. But how do we evaluate success? I did not bake this, by the way. Think back to the beginning. We spoke about how you wanted to measure success. We spoke about, did you say to yourself that you wanted better reporting? Did you want it to be easier to use? This is where you need to look at the product and say, have I got that? Is it easier to use? Is it better at reporting? But first off, actually, you want to know off if you have what's called a cooling off period. And what I mean is that with many products and pieces of software that you purchase, you might have it on a subscription basis for 2 or 3 years. And what these companies often do is that they will say to you, if you decide in the first, say, 3 months that this piece of software is not right for your company, you can either get out of the contract or you can get a refund. That's great, but you need to know that you have that cooling off period and you need to get lots of feedback beforehand so that you can evaluate if it has been successful. So again, this is a great time. You want to get people using it, listen out, and get them to come back to you and tell you what you think so that you can make a decision in a timely fashion about if you want to keep this software. Because there's no shame in deciding after a month or 2 and saying, this isn't working for our business. That's okay. The pity would be if you learnt that after 6 months when you're stuck in that contract for another 2 years. That would suck. I've seen that happen. So, go back to what you agreed at the beginning of the process. What did you want out of this? And make sure that you're able to really value and make a decision about if that's what you have at this point. So, this is what I would do. You decide, what does success look like to you? You think about who are the users and decision makers involved in this software and in this process. You think about all those questions that you're going to ask those vendors, aka be like Columbo. Test the software, get feedback, plan your rollout well, and know how you're going to evaluate success. That's my recipe. That's what I would do. You may all have slightly different things that you would do, but I hope that some of these things have been of use to you during that process so that you can pick the best pieces of software for your company to help them grow. Thank you.